Hi, my name's Molly Ann Bishop, and I am a ceramicist and illustrator and small business owner in Chicago, Illinois. Last year, I made a video of my 2025 business goals and personal goals, and I wanted to go through them with you guys. And this isn't going to be a highlight reel or a flex because a lot of things I did not reach, but I was thinking that maybe it would be inspiration for you as you're setting out on making your 2026 business goals. So we'll go through my 2025 business goals, and then I'll use that as a framework to talk about what I want to get done in the new year. I want to start out by saying that my word of the year was systems, and I tried to do everything in my power to build a foundational system for growing the business. I have a prop. My focus on systems, the reason I focused on systems is because in the beginning of 2025, I read this book on the treadmill, and it kind of changed how I thought about my business. And you don't have to buy this book. I'll just tell you sort of the broad strokes. The idea of the E-Myth is that a lot of entrepreneurs start out as what he calls, I think, engineers. It's a book about becoming an entrepreneur and kind of outsourcing some things so that you don't get lost in the sauce. And I really like this book because the author, Michael Gerber, has you think about your business as something franchisable. And even if you don't want to be a franchise, which I certainly don't, the thing about a franchise is you have to make a system and write down an account for everything that you do so that you can help someone else who's working for you learn how you do things. So systems and this book has been the foundation of 2025 for me, and it helped me build out my operations database, which I would like to make more videos about in the future. If you're interested, let me know. The operations database has become a sort of how-to manual for everything for Molly Ann Bishop Incorporated, and anyone who works for me has access to it, and most questions that they might have about the business can be answered through the operations database. And that was all because I read this book and learned about creating healthy systems for the business to grow. So the operations database was the single best achievement of 2025 for me. And as I go through my goals for 2025 and move on to my goals for 2026, we'll relate everything back to how systems impacted it and how and what the word of the year for 2026 will be. So let's talk money. In 2025, I created a financial goal for myself for the profit of my business. And that ended up being a really lofty goal. I absorb a lot of content as a woman on the internet about girl boss culture and manifesting. And so I came up with this huge profit goal that was a really blue sky, ambitious goal. And I liked the energy that I came at it with, but it was completely unreachable without a strategy. So this year, instead of creating a goal that's completely blue sky, unattainable, I've decided to, instead of look at the yearly profit goal, I'm gonna focus on paying myself a salary that allows myself a bit more flexibility with my finances. I'm an S Corp, and so because my business is strategized that way, I pay myself a monthly salary, and I'm gonna increase that a little bit. I'm not gonna increase it a lot. I'm gonna go up a little bit each month and see how that feels and if the business can accommodate it. But what I like about this kind of money goal is instead of it being a holistic yearly profit goal, it's broken down into a month by month increment. So I'll be able to have a better idea of what I can actually pay myself. And that way it keeps my personal finances and my business finances a little bit more separate. On top of my profit goal being a little bit out of reach, there were a couple of curveballs that 2025 threw at me that I couldn't have anticipated. The first one is the tariffs, and they have impacted my business in crazy ways. For instance, one sweatshirt design that I make has doubled in cost to make and get produced from 2024 to 2025. And I don't feel comfortable passing that cost on to my customers. So right now, me and a lot of other retailers I know are eating that cost and hoping that the tariffs even out, but all of that is really uncertain right now. And so the tariffs that got introduced in April or May have been a huge curveball to a product-based business that relies on overseas manufacturing. The second curveball is that even though nobody wants to say it, we're sort of in a recession. And the fact is people aren't spending money on fancy one-of-a-kind ceramics or t-shirts with frogs on them. And so we've had to kind of adjust the business and understand that because of that, we might have a slow year. So I don't know exactly what my numbers for 2025 are yet, but it's looking like we might be just breaking even, or we could potentially be in the red. This happens a lot to small businesses like mine with high expenses. And this isn't a failure. The fact that I didn't hit my profit goal isn't a failure. I think the failure is that I set a really lofty goal with no strategy of how to get there. And that's why I really like my 2026 goal that is more on a month-to-month basis, and it's more focused on what the business can pay me as a worker for the business instead of what the business is bringing in on a holistic bird's eye view yearly basis. The other thing I like about this salary goal is it's going to require me to check in with my numbers monthly instead of waiting for my bookkeeper to get to me with my quarterly reports. This goal will force me to have a more realistic check-in with my profit and loss. The next goal I had for 2025 was to hire a bookkeeper and an operations assistant. And so basically I wanted to hire a lot more support, and that I definitely did. So in 2025, I hired a bookkeeper who does all of my profit and loss and gets all of that together to my accountant. And while this was really helpful and I don't have to worry about this myself anymore, I found that it's sort of removed me from looking at the day-to-day operations of the business. And there are certain things that I'm paying for that I don't even realize I'm paying for because I'm not the one looking at the numbers. So in 2026, instead of just handing all of this stuff off to my bookkeeper, I would like to have quarterly check-ins with her, whether they're in person or over the phone, because I found that I don't work well with emails and I have a hard time digesting quantitative information. So having chats that give me a bit more qualitative insight on money will be really helpful. And this is also really scary for me because I hate thinking about money. Often when I'm looking at my business's money, I feel really demoralized. And as somebody who's chosen a non-traditional career, I've felt really emotional about money, and I've reacted to that emotion by avoiding it. So I'm really hoping that I can nut up in 2026 and just look at everything and stop being so scared. I think a lot of this fear comes from growing up pretty financially insecure, and I also have felt a bit left behind as my friends and peers have careers where they're leveling up in these ways that I can't relate to. I often feel a little bit lesser than. And so instead of trying to tackle that head on, I've really avoided it. So in 2026, my plan is to have these quarterly calls with my bookkeeper and just have a bit more bravery around looking at the money and thinking about things a bit more practically instead of just these blue sky ambitious goals that have no strategy behind them and no actual data behind them. The other thing I wanted to do in 2025 was hire an operations assistant, and this is something I did, and I'm so proud of doing this. It's really been helpful for me, and I can't recommend highly enough asking for help when you need it. So I hired an operations assistant in April, and she was great, worked for me until about August and had to move on to another job. So I hired a second operations assistant, and that meant that I did 2 rounds of hiring, and I learned a lot in the process. The first thing I learned is having interviews in person is really great because you get a better feel for how you'll work with someone. And it also gives people an idea of what the job looks like, what the commute looks like. And I felt that really helped me set myself up for success when hiring people. I also like to treat interviews a bit more like conversations, and I want the person who I might be hiring to interview me to see if they think that I'm a good fit as an employer as well. So I learned a lot by going through 2 rounds of interviews. Each time I interviewed around 7 to 10 people. It was a big time commitment, and it caused a lot of scheduling headaches, but it ultimately meant that I found 2 really good fits. And I'm super glad that I took the time to be that conscientious in hiring. My other goal for 2025 was to have 4 product launches and have a plan and work ahead for each of them, and that didn't really happen. I wanted to have a March product launch with ceramic themed merch, a spring summer product launch with kids products and adult summer products, then a fall launch around September, and then a holiday launch. And I did hit all of those goals. It's just that each time it felt a bit rushed and it felt a bit amorphous. For instance, in my spring launch, I had kids products come out, and then I also had a few summer products like the Julia Roberts collection. None of this felt cohesive. It was very all over the place, and which meant that marketing and messaging was really difficult. 4 product launches seems really easy for a business like mine. I've actually found that 4 product launches might be too much for me and the way that I work. So this year I'm aiming for only 2, and I want each product launch to have more products and more diversity in products and be more cohesive. So my plan is to do a spring summer launch in May and then a holiday launch in November. So for May, I want to do a summer collection with a lot of merchandise, t-shirts, potentially a new drinking glass, maybe a new bandana design, some stickers, and I can use those products for all of my summer markets because I do a lot of in-person craft fairs and markets. And then my holiday launch will have ornaments, which have historically done pretty well, and potentially some sweatshirt designs, some colder weather things, and good holiday gifts. I also really want to do another puzzle. But because I'm only doing 2, I have a lot of time to plan and get excited about it and think about storytelling within the marketing, and it will feel a little bit less like I'm shooting from the hip with my products, which is sort of how I felt last year. In addition to doing 2 seasonal launches, I am streamlining my core collection, and I've decided to think about all of my products within this framework of a core collection, which will always be offered, and those will be good products to wholesale, and then seasonal launches, which will be limited editions, and having those products feel a little more special and exclusive might be more impetus for customers to collect those things, and that way when they're gone, they're gone. It seems revolutionary to me, but this is how actually every retailer structures their business. So I'm not doing anything revolutionary or brand new here, but it's been really exciting for me to think about. And I've been nervous about this because there are certain designs that I'm pulling away from the core collection, and I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling like I'll miss them. But I just sent out a newsletter to my customers letting them know that I'm retiring certain designs, and a lot of people supported that and ordered what they could because they knew that they might not be able to get it. And that little boost in capital and a little boost in revenue will give me the capital to invest in restocking the core collection because I'm pretty low on designs after the holiday season, and also give me a bit of cash to invest in the spring product line. Another goal I had for 2025 was to post 1 YouTube video a week, which did not happen. I was really consistent for the first 2 to 3 months of the year, but I found that I was spending 10 to 15 hours a week working on YouTube, and it was really fun, but it wasn't really giving me anything back. My goal is to continue to make long form videos, but I think I'm gonna put them behind a paywall and try that out at a cadence of once a month. Doing monthly videos feels a lot more attainable, and having them on Substack makes them feel a little more special and intimate, and I can share a bit more about what's really going on behind the scenes. So if that sounds interesting to you, please subscribe to my Substack, and we'll be doing 1 video a month, kind of like this, but it'll be behind the scenes business stuff, strategy talk like this, and also art making and creative block breaking, that kind of thing. Also on Substack, being able to share a bit more of the behind the scenes emotional side of running a business means that my newsletter can just be sales focused. And I really leaned into that in 2025. And my first assistant, Shannon, did a lot of help in streamlining the newsletter. And having that just be sales focused helps create a nice compartmentalized space where I can really think of my mailing list newsletter as more of a sales engine, and then the Substack can be a bit more of a intimate, sharing, personal experience. I also talked in my 2025 video about wanting to have a solo show, and at that time I was gearing up to apply for a solo show at a really cool gallery called Pamplemousse in Richmond, which is no longer with us, unfortunately. And I unfortunately did not get that solo show, which actually makes a lot of sense because I don't think I would have been ready to have a show there at the time. But the good news is that I have a solo show here in Chicago in May, and I'll be making all kinds of ceramic work for that. And I'll be sharing that experience through Substack and through videos and blog posts about what it takes to put together a body of work and share it, and what kind of work might go into a solo show versus direct to consumer on the website. There's a lot of interesting questions to answer there, and I'm excited to work on that and share a bit of the behind the scenes. So I'm gearing up for the solo show in May, and that is one of the most exciting goals I have for 2026. I talked a bit in my 2025 goals about really protecting my art time and figuring out a way to separate my capital A art time from my art for business time. And that's something that I think is a project I'll be working on for my entire life. It's really hard to not have those boundaries blur. I think having the solo show will give me a bit of a push to really think about what it means to make fine art or art for a gallery versus art for a web drop. And I'm excited to see what that means and what that looks like in 2026. I wanted to sketchbook a lot more. Sketchbooking is a huge part of my practice, and it's how I come up with all of my ideas. And I think the problem with my 2025 art making goal is I didn't really have any quantitative goal, and I found that having a numbers goal really helps me stay focused. So last year I filled up 2 sketchbooks, and this year I'm aiming to fill up 1 sketchbook every other month. And I would love to make videos about drawing in a sketchbook and how I think about that time, how I come up with ideas to draw, what those drawings mean, and how they end up living in the world in other things like watercolors or ceramics. So if you're interested in those kinds of videos, please subscribe to my Substack because a lot of that will be coming as well. Okay, so to recap, I think that my 2025 goals were a little lofty, and for 2026, I'm scaling down and trying to be a bit more realistic. So my word of the year for 2025 was systems. I still want to build on the systems that we started and build out the operations database to have even more information. But my word of the year for 2026 is strategy. And so everything I do, I want to do with intent and a plan. So having 2 collections launch in 2026 with a clear plan and a clear numbers plan on how I'm going to fund the collections, how much money I can expect to make, where I can expect to sell these things, how many things to order, that's feeling a lot easier than just shooting in the dark for a huge profit goal. Cutting down to a core collection and moving the other products on to new homes will be really helpful and make a lot more space for the new products that we have launching in 2026. In order to streamline our core collection, we have put all of the other products into an archive sale on my website, and those are all 20% off right now using the code archive20. So if there's something that you've seen and it's heading out into retirement, make sure to shop it now before it's gone forever. Moving into 2026, I really want to make the business a bit more streamlined and a bit easier so that I can really focus on making art And the solo show I have in May at Latza here in Chicago is so exciting. So I really hope that you'll follow along on that journey as I make the work for that. I'm hoping to do some lamps and sculptural stuff along with one-of-a-kind ceramics. The other thing I want to be better about in 2026 is celebrating my accomplishments. I'm really bad about this. So I'm hoping to share a bit more about what I'm excited about and what I'm working on. And I hope that Substack and these long-form videos will be a good way to do that. So I really appreciate you watching. Let me know what your 2026 goals are. And please follow along on my journey to become a better business owner and a better artist.